Hey guys and girls, and we are live.
Hey Nate, how are you?
I am tremendous. I'm doing pretty well actually.
Oh, that's good.
Apart from the freak storm that's outside.
Yeah, that was crazy.
It's crazy. But just making sure our camera is live. If you guys can see us and hear us, smash up a like. Let us know that you can hear us and see us just before we get into it. Make sure that we don't have any technical issues. Sometimes there's technical issues in here, Red. I don't know if it's because we're being censored or blocked or...
I think it's more the case that we're just getting inundated with people crashing the system on us.
There's not really many people crashing on us. Hey Greg, how you doing? Can you hear us well? Can you see us well? Everything appearing okay on the tech front, and we'll get straight into it. I just have this feeling tonight there's going to be a tech issue. I don't know why.
Nah, we'll get through it. I'm here.
Yeah, but...
The brown people here to save the day.
Brown people here. Unfortunately, you're an accountant one, not my IT guys. So come on. Beautiful. Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate that. Hope everyone's having an awesome week. Today, I have a guest with us, returning guest, Ridhwan Hannan from One Path Accountants. Thanks for coming along.
Thanks for having me, Nate. It's always a pleasure.
It's always fun, mate. It's always fun.
It's always dicey.
Accountants are meant to be conservative and all that. Ridhwan's very conservative, but always seem to get him to laugh.
Yeah, right? You do.
He's always scared about what's the first you're going to ask me.
Somebody said it to me.
What's that?
I'm your filter.
I'm holding myself back. I said a joke before we came online, and I said, "Can I please ask you a question?" He's like, "No, don't ask me. Don't ask me." We were just having laughs about the crazy world that we live in. And,
it's very crazy at the moment, yeah.
Very crazy. So I want to share just a little random thing, right? And Steve might be watching this. He's one of our investors. I was having a chat with him, just a bit of a portfolio review today. And we're like, how can we fix our cash flow and our portfolio? The interest rates have gone up a lot and all this. I gave him some pointers, and I said to him, let's put our rents up. But he said, look, Nathan, the rents are going to take a little while to come on through. And with those rents, we were able to push up about $1,000 a week, but it's going to be over a few months. I said to him, one of the second things I would be doing is seeing how we could cut some costs. And I said, go to your bank and ask for a rate reduction.
Yeah, a lot of clients are doing that, to be honest with you.
And he sent me a text message just beforehand. I'm recording from my phone, so I wrote it down on a sticky note. It says, ANZ reduced 7 loans by 0.5% already. We'll call CBA and talk to him about the mortgage question I had afterwards. So 0.5% just by calling the bank and asking him, right, if you've got $1 million, 0.5%, $5,000 a year. It's as simple as that. You got
Rob Lowe's income's $1 million a year. That was 2 months' work.
There we go. So, yeah, what can you do to lower your expenses at the moment? They're all different things. What can you do to increase your cash flow? So,
not as a jump in, but there's also a tax mechanism you can use. What in the old language used to call 221Ds, tax variations, if you remember them, Nate.
I think what the RBA is trying to give us is 221Ds by the looks of it. It's not good what they're trying to do to us all, but anyway.
Yeah, it's been a little bit rough, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, you can also speak to your accountant, or if you don't have one, contact us, and you can get a variation to the amount of tax which is being withheld on a week-to-week basis from work, or month-to-month basis, which might give you a little bit more cash flow. Reduces what potential refund you have at the end of the year, but you might be able to offset or use that cash flow effectively just to smooth things out, because it has been a little bit rocky with 14, or was it 13 or 14 months worth of straight raises? I can't remember.
Well, they stopped for 1 month.
Oh, so it's 13.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, they stopped 1 month just recently.
Oh, right. So it's 14.
But yeah, look, they've gone up 4%. So whatever that is, 25 basis points. That's 4 per percent. That'd be 4 4s at 16. Yeah. So crazy. Got more thoughts on that shortly, but let's get to our news articles. Everyone loves to do a news article. So look at this guy, right? A lot of people don't realise that there's things called clones out there, right? And have you seen Kanye West recently?
No, I haven't.
It does not look like he's come out. He's been quiet, hasn't said anything. He's jacked. He's massive. His face structure's different. His clones. Like, what's the other guy, Dave Chappelle?
Yeah,
This talks about him being a clone, right?
Dave's all right.
It talks about him being cloned, right? But you can't get past this guy, Joe Biden, with his ears, right? His ears used to be not attached to his head, and now they're attached to his head, right? It's a different type of ear structure. How can you have a different type of ear? What do they do? Take his ear off and put a new one and staple it to his head? It's random. Go look at the photos. Like, just Google it, right? And you can see photos from Joe Biden when he was sure, you can get old and haggard and wrinkly and forgetful and dementia or whatever you want to say, but you can't change. Like, it's like saying your nose used to be skinny and as big. Yeah, like whatever. His ear was not attached, and now it's attached. So people have the earlobe attached, so people don't. His earlobe in 2008 was not attached, and now it is. Random. How could it happen? It doesn't happen. It's not like you just cut it off. It's like it's happened to get attached. Random, anyway. What is the US debt ceiling? So it goes, there's two parties finally reached a deal after weeks of trying. This is old news, but it's kind of relevant as well, because we haven't really spoken about it. The president, whatever they want to call these people, has urged Congress to pass a deal to raise the US government's borrowing limit to prevent a potentially catastrophic default on the US debt repayment. So what is in this deal? Negotiations between the two parties have finalised an agreement on Sunday night. So it's like a week ago before we did the last live. If approved, it would allow the federal government to borrow money until well after the next presidential election due in November 2024. Voting on the bill, the text of which was posted to the congressional website, is set to start later this week in the House and the Senate. Here are the highlights of the stimulus of the package's measures. Debt ceiling suspended until 2025. So the US debt has gone over $31.6 trillion, and now they've just taken US dollars, and they've taken the cap off it, meaning that it can go up as high as they want to take it, which is basically hyperinflation or runaway inflation for the country's debt. And basically, what the debt is not just debt for them to buy things, right? This is like a big credit card that the government has to have because they're insolvent, and the bigger it gets, the harder it is to pay off. But the debt used to be at like 10 basis points. Now the debt's at like 500 basis points. So it's like 5,000% more that they're paying for that interest, and they have to borrow the interest repayments for that in the future. So the higher that this debt limit goes, the higher that the cost of the debt goes, the bigger the mess that they're creating. And it's going to be really fun to watch it unfold.
I think it'd be useful for some people to understand what they use the debt for.
Do you want to explain that? Or?
So it's like when you hear in countries where they go bankrupt and they go, they can't pay their civil servants and whatnot. So in the US, all this type of debt, not limited to, but is paid for, defense force personnel, social security, those type of things. So that's why it's so critical that the US has a debt ceiling and its debt covenants remain within check, because if they don't, that's when they always talk about the US going in default, because obviously one of its...
They can't pay the
wages.
Interest
bill, right? They can't pay the interest bill, right? So that's a really big important thing that the US always tries to avert. It happened interesting stat, they never really had a debt ceiling crisis for this first 90 years of this debt policy. Since 2011, or really 2009, I think, probably since the GFC, have had this issue where they've had to continually increase it. So it is one of those things where it's kind of like, as Nathan said, the countries... IOUs, they can pay their interest bills, they can pay all their, because it's just crediting into account, right? So
their financial position is really in palliative care. It's hooked up to a dialysis machine, which is the debt ceiling, and if the dialysis machine is removed from it, then the system blows up.
It's a big problem, So I think it's really interesting that they've taken the lid off it, and Janet Yellen should say, has been asking for that, saying that it's more ceremonial than it is actually effective.
Ceremonial.
But I think it's interesting in the sense that that check and balance now, has temporarily been kind of removed or diluted. So I think it probably is an interesting window into where the US economy is headed.
Crazy, hey? Crazy. So, of course, they've gone into, having the new flags that they've put up out the front of the White House, and then they've put on their ESG, so environmental, social governance, and it says here, easy to get energy project permits. New rules make it easy for both fossil and renewable energy projects to get licenses. So now they're pumping this green credit bullshit that's going on out there at the moment. And we're going to touch on that a little bit later, because we've got a lot of articles about and lots of things I want to talk about the clean energy. But this green world that we're moving into, it could be a big problem for people in the future because they'll want to upgrade existing dwellings, which will mean that lots of capital will need to be spent in there. The government will then stimulate that. They'll take more debt on.
Sure.
Currency will be backed via, the ESG scores that you're obtaining and the ability to obtain that debt, which is just basically, oh, please, can you just give me some more fraud to play with and, hook me up to the system. It's crazy. It's crazy. This second one, this one here, did I put this one out last week? Yeah, I put that one out last week, which was the more bad news for renters as landlords indicate more rent rises. Actually, we did do that one last week. Just goes on to say Australians should be warned to strap in for further rent increases as landlords get hit with additional taxes under what's been called the government's attempt to patch up the holes in the leaking budget.
I think an NAB chief came out today, or chief economist came out today and said that.
We've got that article too.
Oh, do you? Oh,
yeah.
Good. All right. Excellent.
I believe so. I think this is one of the last ones that we've got here. I like the fact that they're coming out. There's the dominoes and there's,
that's cool. Yeah,
we'll go into that
we'll
in a
go into
second.
that. Sorry, jump the gun.
That's okay. No, that one there, we've already seen that one before. This one here. Building companies dropping like flies.
Yeah,
Like
it's been a
sports.
big problem. Actually, I had a client the other week, lovely guy, and he told me that, Jason, if he's having a look at this, he told me that there's 3,000 dwellings at the moment in sort of a state of limbo. Right? So builders can't get together to actually complete the work. iCare is sort of ensuring it. They don't know who to do the work through. So it's real tough out there at the moment, especially in the building space, and that has a huge flow-on effect for us.
It's good that they've got the builders worrying there to start off with, eh? That one there we've already seen. So here's a cool one. This one here is horror recession warning facing Australia after 12 brutal interest rate rises. Things are going from bad to worse for the economy thanks to 12 brutal rate rises and skyrocketing inflation, and it could take years to fix. Upon release of the latest UK inflation data, Britain became the cautionary tale for the RBA and central banks around the world. It revealed that core inflation excluding food and energy in Britain, rose to a 31-year high of 6.8%, 0.5% higher than the previous peak in 2022, recorded back in October last year, despite the Bank of England raising interest rates 12 times from 10 basis points in December 2021 to 4.5% following the latest rates meeting. Inflation in the UK has only become more and more entrenched, right? So don't think a lot of people realise this, right? When you look at the CPI or the CPI index, as they like to call it, the rent. So what does that consist of? It consists of a basket of goods. It has meat, right? You used to have a nice piece of steak, and then it went down to a sausage, and now it's just gone to some Beyond Meat gun that's been printed in a factory that, one of the globalist owns, right? And, they're not comparing apples for apples what they used to. They used to compare it based on house prices, right? But they've taken out the house price and they put in mortgage rates. They took out mortgage rates, now they're comparing it to rents, right? But if you look at rents have gone up dramatically recently, right? And the more that the rents are going up, like rents have probably gone up 40% in a lot of instances, 50% per year in instances. However, the problem is that as the rents are going up, as is the inflation. So it's putting more and more pressure. So the more that they increase the interest rates, they might put the interest rate up. The interest rate might go up from 3% to 6%. It's only got 50% really when it comes to 100%. But it's only gone up a little bit. But when you look at the rent has gone up at a far greater level, and putting that into the CPI is just adding to that inflation. So then they go back and say, well, the inflation's gone up, so we've got to put this up.
It's a problem. It's a bit of a spiral that occurs. So because inflation is so pervasive throughout all, so inflation and interest rates are so pervasive throughout all parts of the economy. You raise interest rates, and then your tea goes up to $8. Right?
Yeah.
So
what do you mean by your tea? You explained it.
I went out for tea last night, and they
tea, like coffee tea.
No, as in like hot water and a tea bag.
Yeah, not tea as in dinner.
No, not tea as in dinner. No, we don't use that word. But but it was $8, right? And so my friend across the table said, "How is inflation affecting this?" Right? Yes, in the wages, in the rent, in the lights, in electricity, and all permeates through. And so what happens is that this spiral that we've got, and Ross Gittin talks about it quite a lot, is that you either want to control the inflation by breaking the economy, or you want to be able to try and have a little bit more creative or inventive ways where you can do that. So whether that's price caps, whether that's GST, luxury good caps or limits, those type of things are not being thought of. They're just using this one big sledgehammer to knock down the nail. And in the process, you might break the whole,
the whole system.
Yeah.
Everyone that I'm speaking to is feeling the pinch, right? But it's only a pinch. It's only been a year. It's like it's like that video you were talking about before in the monkey, right? Explain that story. You're watching a video.
So watching a video, so the gentleman was talking about basically how things can change rapidly. So you have this situation where they incentivize these animals to...
What's the animal?
Well, monkeys, right?
Yeah.
And to get a banana. Well, they didn't incentivize the monkey to get a banana. They had a banana in a corner, and a lot of people probably will know what I'm talking about. And then when a monkey went to get the banana, they sprayed all the other monkeys with ice cold water.
Yeah.
And so they kept doing this until the monkeys realized that, hey, if any of us go for this banana, then we're all going to get a drenching. So they started beating up the monkeys which wanted to actually go for the banana.
Yeah.
And they started swapping out the monkeys who didn't know the actual game.
Yeah.
And then by the end of it, they didn't have to use the water. The monkeys were just beating up the ones who went to go for the banana.
Yeah.
Until at the end, all the monkeys were in there.
Yeah.
Didn't know why, but they couldn't go for the banana. Right?
Yeah.
And so the rules changed on them.
Well, the rules have changed on everybody.
They have.
Right? They're slowly cranking up the frog in the pot and turning up the volume there. And
someone's going to jump out.
Someone's going to jump out, but at the same time, it's just the pressure is there, and everybody's getting smashed. Like everyone's getting smashed.
I think we see with a lot of people's finances and tax. Obviously, we don't give any financial advice about what they should necessarily do to change, but in terms of what we can see from black and white perspective is that last financial year all the rates were low. Mm-hmm. So people looking at their refunds going, the property's doing pretty well because they're all positively geared. And I'm sort of bracing people to say, hey, FY22, 23 is going to be a little bit different. It's going to look a lot worse. It doesn't mean your property's bad necessarily. It just means that the rules have changed a little bit, right? So I think it was the RBA and Rob Lowe said that, they're not going to be raising rates until 2024. That's obviously changed in a pretty significant way.
Have we ever spoke about someone giving financial advice? Because we only give advice, not financial advice. We only give non-financial advice, yeah? And if someone was to give financial advice, look at this guy. Like, he just looks like a fucking twerp, right? Look at him. I thought virgin. Anyway, this guy, look at him, right?
Aside from his looks, I think the problem of it is that...
No, I think people would like to pick on him. Look at him, that's the guy controlling our lives, right? That's the guy controlling our lives, right? He said to everybody, interest rates would not go up to 2024.
He did say that.
Right?
He did say that.
I'd love to create a class action against this guy for everyone to jump in. It would be fun. And let's go and get him, right? The most amount of money is this guy.
See, what aside from the class action, what I think is the overlooked part is that with all the resources, all the intelligence, all the, number crunches there.
Intelligence from this place.
They got it substantially wrong, right? In terms of inflation, things that we've been talking about, specifically you've been talking about for a while, saying that there's a big fire and they're just feeding it, right?
Yeah.
And if you feed the fire, what happens? If you stoke it, it just gets larger and larger, right? And so I think that's the part that a lot of people overlooked. Certainly they overlooked it. And a lot of people, unfortunately and fortunately, jumped into properties pre-COVID, during COVID, and it's gone up in value, which is fine, but also the holding cost now. So I think it's just important that everyone understands that I think it's going to be a bit rough.
Yeah.
Right? That's the reality. I don't see it coming down anytime soon, but I've sort of stopped hypothesizing about what's going to happen because it's been hard to get it right.
It's inevitable. Like, the fundamentals completely off the table now. They've completely everything that was
upside down.
It's completely off the table, and the fundamentals are gone. And one thing's for sure, and it's interesting that now the big four banks are coming out and they're talking about it with their economists and that, which I don't agree with half the shit they say because they're all wrong. Well, anyway, like this tomato head. They're coming out now saying that around October we'll see rate cuts, right? Potentially 4 to 5, right? That'll be happening this year.
But what does that tell you?
Well, they're just another clown that's getting things wrong as well.
That's happening. The economy's in a really
bad place.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Extremely bad place, right?
And it's inevitable. Like, you can't, just think about it, right? Like everybody watching this, right? Let's just say that we've all got our brains, because a lot of people don't have their brains attached to them still, right? Especially when it comes to these commie fellas that are out there. But you go and ask your friends and family, like, how's your business going? Like, I ask everybody from my chiropractor to the food shop I'll go to, or anywhere. I don't go to Uber. Yeah, I've been to Uber for ages. If you ask the Uber driver, whoever, right? They're all doing it tough, right?
Yeah, sure.
It's like, well, why are you doing it tough? Oh, not enough clients, not enough people doing things, whatever. Some businesses are booming, right? Fortunately enough for us, everything's fantastic, right? It's never been better. But for a lot of businesses, they're doing it tough out there. And, you know, there's a sign of things to come, right? And it's putting pressure. And how many more businesses are going to go under? How many more zombie companies are out there? How much more squeezing of that system can we do before? We've already seen the banks go bankrupt. Right? Whoever would have thought you'd see the banks go under? It's crazy. So, but anyway, it's just this article here with this idiot. It says here, inflation now confirmed as sticky. Anything that's sticky is in this guy's hands, right? Financial markets have priced it further. He's chewing gum. Can't afford it anymore. What are you talking about, Rick? But financial markets have priced in further rate hikes by the Bank of England, penciling in a further 0.75% rate rises before the end of the year, right?
I don't understand it, but sure.
But you can't take out $31.5 trillion worth of debt, beg for another $10 trillion worth of debt, add 5,000%. Everyone could afford debt at 10 basis points.
Yeah.
They can't afford debt at 500 basis points. That's where the straw's going to break. It's the governments. It's everyone's going to go bust. So they're either going to let this system completely implode, which I don't believe that they'll do yet. They'll wait for the hyperinflation because they want to print more money and get rid of the fraud quick as they can from just printing their way through.
You know that little video, the sort of cartoon video you sent me once? Remember with the guy getting UBI and then printing it that goes through the hyperinflation? You should show that video one day.
Yeah, I'll share it in the Birch feed. So that's the one, I think it's the Ray Dalio video. It's about a half an hour with a video, is it?
No, it's not the Ray Dalio. I mean...
no, it's just a video. It's a cartoon that he wrote. Yeah, it was the Ray Dalio one that he wrote.
Yeah.
But I'll share it with you guys. So check it on Birch feed later. If you're not on Birch feed, birchfeed.com. Keep saying everyone go sign up there and it's free. Don't need to pay for anything. Interesting times. So it looks like UK is leading the pack of, inflation.
But the UK is sort of not an archetype, but it's certainly a declining economy in terms of, core global strength and all those other different things. Yes, it still has a lot of, positives, obviously, but in terms of contribution, it's not doing as what it used to, right? Australia is slightly different, but I think they're sort of kind of painting the same picture with all the same brushes, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's probably other mechanisms that they're not considering, and everyone's just looking at the one tool, which is interest rates, to be able to solve all the problems.
Yeah. Well, all I can imagine is that when they come out of this cycle, what are they going to have to do to start printing, right? And they've already started printing, and no one's even really realised it yet.
So I was asking you the other day,
Yeah.
what happens to property? It's not financial advice.
We don't give financial advice.
What happens to property when interest rates drop 0.1%? They just signify, they go, we're dropping rates.
Like 125 basis points.
Yeah. What do you reckon?
Well, what happens is it actually signifies to all markets that they've lost control of monetary supply, right? Because at that point, they say, well, we can't control inflation. And then it just runs off.
But if the perfect outcome for them occurs, where they control inflation, somehow magically by the end of next year or this year, whatever it is, goes to 2-3% target, and they go, okay, cool, the rates need to come down.
People's perception of money has changed. Right? People realise that their money doesn't buy them what it bought them.
I just don't think it helps house prices in the way that they'd like it to help.
Oh no, it's going to create a massive inflation, right? We've got massive growth, right? I was saying to the last call that I did, you walked in just on me doing a call with one of our investors, and I said, people are still waiting there from 2020. They thought that the sky was going to crash in, right? They thought, lockdowns, all that. Then they saw things happen. They're like, oh, this is going to crash. It's going to crash. It's going to crash. Everyone always thinking it's going to crash, right? But they've just put up interest rates at the highest rate ever, right? All that happened is things got kicked up. Hey?
Highest rate of last.
Percentage-wise.
Since the 90s.
They've gone up from 10 basis points to 410 basis points. That's a 4,000% increase in interest rate, in the cash rate, in 12 months. I don't think any other time they've gone up 4,000%.
The speed it's gone up, you mean?
The velocity of it.
Yeah, sure.
And the percentage of it, right? Because a 100,000 loan at 10% interest is like $1 million loan at 1% interest, right? And everyone was scared of 10, 15, 20% interest rates. It's the same thing by under 5%. It's worse.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So, just if we're seeing property prices grow, we're seeing things happen. What's going to happen when they change the course of monetary policy? That's the exciting part.
They're in a rock and hard place that they've created.
I said last week, Ridhwan, I was at the doctor's maybe a year ago, and I had a cough or something, right? And the doctor always has a trainee doctor, and he goes, can the doctor come in, right? And it was a lady doctor, right? And he goes, can the lady doctor come in? I'm pretty crude, right? It's a lovely young lady, right? And she's a migrant, right? And she wouldn't have heard like crassy Aussie chum, laughy things. And he said, do you mind if the lady doctor comes in and watches us? And I said, well, lucky I don't have anything wrong in any weird places, right? No growth, no nothing, right? And I looked at her and I said, you've gone to university for like 4 years, 5 years, whatever, you become a doctor. You're going to be like looking at the most disgusting things in the world, right? And it was at that point I was like, imagine being a doctor, right? I just thought to myself, like, I don't know, you'd see some weird things, right?
You definitely would.
And I'm scared of blood, scared of needles, all that stuff. So I just couldn't do it, right? So if I had to do something, I'd be like, I wouldn't really want to be a doctor, right? But then I think, who would want to do a worse job? It'd have to be one of these central bankers, right? Because he'd be like Homer Simpson, right? Do you know Homer Simpson sits behind the chair and she goes, oh, I'll push the any key, right? Whatever money you push, you're just going to blow something up, right?
Yeah.
This guy, apart from having to see some really disgusting things in your day, right? This guy, whatever he does, he's going to have people hate him, right? He's going to be killing the consumer, right? And killing the whole economy. Or he's going to be responsible for pushing the button and blowing up all the globalists.
That and pushing up house prices.
Everything, right? Whatever he does, he's dead, right? His career's toast. So, a little bit of sympathy for the guy wouldn't go too far.
He does all right.
He does all right. He chucked a $25,000 dinner the day after he put the interest rates up last time. There's an article about yes. $25,000 party. So on the Aussie government, that is, they paid for it. But anyway, what would happen when they want to change the course of monetary policy, right? What would happen? Would they'd drop interest rates, but they'd all turn the money printer on, right? And they'd try and find ways to stimulate the economy. So here's a new article that just came out the other week. And it says here, millions of more Aussies are eligible for first home guarantee. It will soon be easier for friends, siblings and other family members to buy a home together. Millions more Aussies will be eligible for property leg up, with the federal government announcing a major overhaul of its home guarantee scheme. In an effort to combat the country's housing crisis, the government is expanding its eligibility criteria to a regional first home buyer guarantee and the family home guarantee. It's changing from July 1 this year. Previously, these schemes were only available to people who were married or in a de facto relationship. The scheme eligible buyers can purchase home with a deposit of as little as 5%. The government acts as a guarantor on up to 15% of the loan, so the borrower does not need to pay the lender's mortgage insurance. So basically, you go to a regional area. Looking at mining here, you go to a regional area, and you get incentivized for moving to a regional hub by getting more first home grants that have been thrown out there.
Look, I don't mind targeted programs like that. I think should be targeted in regards to migration as well, because it all has positive effects. However, it's just too polarizing in the sense that you're trying to cap house prices, but then you're pushing them up. You're trying to curb the inflation, but then you're increasing rates, which you hope will help, but actually assists with that price increase in some instances. So it is a bit too speedy and a bit confusing, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm finding this is just what I'm finding as a bit of here's a market update while everyone's watching, right? I'm finding that rents in Sydney, areas that used to be $300 a week, I can picture Mount Druitt red brick 2-bedroom units renting for $500 a week in the next 12 months. $500 a week.
What are they at now?
Oh, like 350.
Okay.
They're at 280.
Lakemba's at 480, 500.
Correct, right? So Lakemba, Liverpool, Fairfield, Bankstown, Campbelltown, Mount Druitt, Penrith, Parramatta, they're all at $300 per week, right? Yeah. And recently, the migrant areas, so like Lakemba, Harris Park, we had a 1-bedroom unit there in Harris Park, previously rented for $300 a week. We put it up to $350. We had 60 people turn up to an open home.
Wow.
3 offers, $450, $470, and $500 a week for a
Wow.
1-bedder. Old shit boxing, not even a garage, not even a car space, right? Old red brick thing, yeah. And now I'm seeing the same thing starting to happen out in Mount Druitt and those sort of areas, right? So $500 a week will be the entry price in the Sydney market, right? What you're doing, and what they're doing, is our friend over at the RBA, most people are looking at it so very short-sighted, right? They're looking at it going, oh, poor me, my interest rate's gone up. And I can sit here and say, like, my fucking interest rate's gone up a lot, right? Like, if anyone wants to whinge, you look at the right bloke that should whinge. But I'm not, because I'm looking at the opportunity in it, right? And whilst most people whinge, it's like there is, opportunities from it. So the rents are rising at a dramatic rate, right? So you're pushing people that should have been buying. They could have bought for like $1 million. They could have bought for $500,000, whatever they could buy. Now their servicing has gone from $500,000 down to $100,000, or from $1 million down to $500,000. They can't service for a property anymore. So you're pushing more people in the rental pool. The second thing that they're doing is bringing in the 700,000 people because they can't afford to make tax slaves quick enough. So we need to bring migration in and then get more people to be a slave to the country and be earning money and paying taxes. So 700,000 people, where are they going? They're going to the high-density migrant locations. They're going to these regional locations. I'm seeing regional areas that used to rent for $250 a week, $220, $250. They're renting for $400, $450 a week.
Yeah, I've got a lot of clients who moved out. But I think one part that you're also not necessarily, you haven't commented on, you've missed it. And I just realised I've been calling Phil Lowe Rob Lowe. Rob Lowe's the actor, it's Phil Lowe. So I apologise. Is that the people whose borrowing power has dropped, they end up going into those more affordable locations and then pushing the price up. So that middle market or the medium market starts to creep up, because you got the person who's going to borrow $850, $900 a mil. Now his borrowing power is $600. He goes, well, I'm going to buy a good place in wherever. That was $450 or $420. It's now $500. It's like the whole premise of moving that needle in those areas.
And I think that's why we see house price and medium house prices going down, because people are buying more activity in that price range, not...
But clearance rates are still tight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it takes me to the next one. And a lot of people are fearful of different types of mining sort of activity. And everyone's like, coal, it's dirty, whatever, right? I'm not going to buy a gas-powered car. I'm going to buy myself a Tesla, right? We all know a Tesla driver or two, right? And with a Tesla, you think you're doing the world of green energy thing, right? But you're going to go take your fucking car, plug it into the power point, and then charge your car from a coal-powered fuel station, right? Instead of having oil and petrol in it, right?
Cut out one refinement.
Pushing everyone to the coal, right? So looking at it, they can't just change the coal overnight, right? That's like a 30 to 50 year plan. But in a lot of these areas, they've got to keep the ESG scores up, right? And they need to show that they're contributing into certain marketplaces and doing certain things. Here's just one, right? In the recent budget, there was like tens of trillions, maybe tens of billions of dollars worth of incentives from the government to regional coal towns to push up different types of energy projects. And here's just one, right? This is just a random one I saw yesterday. One of my investors sent me some news articles, just random, and then I looked at it, I went digging into it, and I just saw this one here. The Pioneer Burdekin Pumped Hydro Project. The Pioneer Valleys adjacent to the ranges in the Burdekin catchment have been identified as a preferred second-tier site for a long-duration pumped hydro energy storage facility. What the project involves. In June 22, the Queensland government announced a $35 million funding to identify a second site 75 kilometres west of Mackay. So it's one of them. There's another one which is a 15 million one. There's another one which is a 20 billion one. These are 20 billions. These aren't just like, this one is a couple of million.
It's not a car park.
It's not a car park, right? They're literally tens of billions of dollars worth of infrastructure that they're putting in, and you need all the ports for that because they're shipping it out, and amazing things that they're going to be stimulating the economy with. They've got, regional stuff, you've got, Anyway, let's get to the article. Do you want to read this one, or should we read it together? Or
Go for it.
This one here is today's article. It says here, rate rises threaten the worst economy since the 1990s recession, the NAB economist says. One of the nation's largest banks has warned up to 200,000 Australians could lose their jobs over the next 18 months as the economy sinks under the weight of 13 interest rate rises with more expected. NAB chief economist Alan Oster, who believes the Reserve Bank will lift official interest rates by 4.6% by the end of the winter, said the economy is now facing its worst back-to-back years since the 1990 to 1991 recession. The RBA has lifted official interest rates from 0.1% in May last year to 4.1% this month, in the most aggressive tightening monetary policy since the late 1980s. It's aiming to bring down inflation currently at 7% without driving up employment, in what a bank governor, Philip Lowe, has often described as a narrow path. I find it interesting that they're looking to bring down inflation without driving up unemployment in what Governor Philip Lowe, right? I don't know why they call him a governor, because it is a private centralised bank. But the question is what business has Philip Lowe ever conducted? He's never owned a business, never run a business. He's just been put there as a politician, allegedly. And you're telling me that you can increase interest rates 4,000% in a year. You can decimate all different parts of the world. People can't afford luxuries in life, so they're going to be removing things, and that's going to have no impact on the employment or the state of the business economy.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's kind of like what we talk about with regard to guys who are in the property market, selling properties. They haven't got a property between them, right? So they're sort of spruiking.
There's so many experts in it, right? There's so many experts. I actually had a thought about this, right?
Yeah.
So, sorry to
No, you're right.
digress. I was thinking about the deals that we do, right? And sometimes people are like, oh, the interest rates have gone up. It's really hurting me. I bought a property for 200, it rents for 300. The rent's now 400. It's like, well, you're neutral still, right? It made me think about all these heroes that are out there that have come onto the scene the last couple of years. They're property gurus, they own no property, they've got no property, they're buying their first property, they don't have any runs on the board, they've never been through a recession, they haven't been investing for 10, 15, 20 years, none of that sort of stuff. They've just been doing a little course. These properties that people are buying out there, how many people, right, have bought properties that are like 200 grand, now rent for $400 a week, they're worth 500 grand, that sort of thing. Whatever that we've bought. Yeah. How many people have gone out and bought a block of land with a house on it for $800,000, get $600 a week, right? If you had bought a property for 800 grand, rent for $600 a week, you would be fucked right now, right? Like, well and truly, paying that extra interest every month, month in, month out. And I've seen these new gurus coming out going, oh, well, if you could just go and pull out a bit of equity, and let's say it's negative cash flow, 25 grand a year, for the next 3 years, you could pull out the equity and be able to pay for the property with its own equity. I'm like, this stuff is like the Big Short style, right?
Yeah.
It's not sustainable as a strategy. But anyway,
And I think it's to some extent to what you're saying is you've got a lot of people who are running the economy who are not small business owners, who are not business owners who have understood what it is to pay wages, whatever it might be on a month-to-month, week-to-week basis. It's hard yards.
Yeah.
Right? And when things are going up, but what's coming through the door, what's coming over the till is not, then what do? You raise your own prices. And then what happens? CPI goes up and the basket of goods becomes...
It's just feeding into it,
right? And so I think that it just needs a little bit more thought, needs a few more angles to it. And I think, unfortunately, with what Nathan's saying is that if you haven't got people behind the wheel who have driven the pathway before, there's no... Sure, if you're just following the map, you can get thrown in swings and roundabouts, right? Yeah. So I think it's really important that everyone understands what they're doing, why they're doing it. I was talking with a client before, is that And he or she was asking me, saying,
We don't know these days.
he was saying that, you know, what advice do you have? I said, well, you need to know where you're going, and we're reading this sign in front of us saying financial freedom faster, right? And that's
monopoly wall. I've got the whole wall.
Yeah.
This big monopoly wall.
And it's important to know what you are trying to achieve out of this. It's not just about owning properties. It's not about buying properties faster, in my opinion, right? It's about actually going, I know what the goal is, and I know my pathway to get there. We've got some clients who do extremely well. And I mentioned to that client on the phone, you know, what's the takeaway advice? I said, stay the course. Because you have that property you're talking about, which was in Harris Park, which you bought probably for what, 300, 260, something like that.
280, something like that, yeah.
But if you panicked and sold 3, 4, 5 years later and got your money back, did your what's it called, stamp duty in, and then you sold it for what you had, and you didn't see the course, and you don't see the fruits at the end of this right? It's like planting your seeds. You've got to wait till the fruit comes to collect your harvest.
Very important. Like we've seen people, like investors that we know very closely, that have bought properties, didn't know what they were buying, they just bought them because they were cool. They saw an uplift of 50 grand on or something going to sell it, and that could have been the Gold Coast. They bought it for 200, sold it for 280 or something, thought they were a hero, and now it's worth 600,000. And
renting good.
And renting for $800 or $700 a week. Yeah. And it's like, that wouldn't be a good investment property to buy today. But let me tell you, when I was buying 50 properties a month for 12 months of the year, times like 7 or 8 years consistently in the Gold Coast, and everyone said, Birchie, why would you buy those things up there? They're shit, they won't go up, etc., etc. Those things have all tripled. I was on Channel 7 News for a half-hour documentary talking about the fact in a helicopter flying over and saying this is the next market to take off before it did take off, because there was value there. There's a lot of people just buying on the premise of a hope and a dream and a statistical data that won't add up. Like people come and say, oh, I want to buy property in the Gold Coast now because it's got lots of good growth. It's like you're buying at the top of the market, you've got all the risk factored in. You want to buy stuff that's had the risk removed.
100%, yeah. So look, it's just that was a bit of a side note, but yeah, it's just what you were saying.
Says here, unemployment at 5% would take the number of people without a job beyond 720,000, a 200,000 jump on the current number. Economic growth below 1% would ordinarily be considered recessionary. The economy expanded by just 1% in 1990, contracting by 1% in 1991. The RBA is forecasting growth this year of 1.25% before picking up to 1.7% through 2024. The jobless rate now at 3.7% is forecast to reach 4.4 by the end of next year. Now, I know what a lot of people will probably be saying in the next voting cycle. They'll be going, oh, look at this. What's his name? Bill Shorten, Albanese, whatever the fuck his name is. Life ain't easy being sleazy. I don't know. Just made that up. Just made that up, right? But people will be sitting there mocking this guy, saying, oh, another Labor government fucked us over. They've made us in a recession and all these things. This guy had nothing to do with it, right? Nothing. It was your communist spending from the Liberal Party, which didn't even have control over it. It was Robert Lowe that was handing out the free lollipop and what?
Phil
Lowe. Well, he made me say, well, I don't even know who Rob Lowe is, right? Who's Rob Lowe? He said, Rob Lowe, is that the guy that sings I Can't Get Enough of Your Love, Baby? Is it the guy?
No, Rob Lowe is an actor.
Oh, I don't know who that is, but anyway, Philip Lowe was handing out fucking chupa chups to all the politicians, right? And they were all at the party. They were all, having a good party and all that. It is purely 110% the Reserve Bank of Australia's fault for this mess that we're in. And anybody that took the money or signed hands or took benefit from that, it's their problem for causing this. And I'll hands up say I love participating in this game, because if it wasn't for these guys setting the stage for this game to play, we wouldn't be having this game. We wouldn't be seeing the growth and the fun things that happen from it. So, I think the bigger picture is very, very important. And a lot of people might be feeling the pinch at the moment. It's one of the things we're going to talk about, is feeling the pinch. What things can you do to protect yourself? And here's just another little fun one. Domino's to ditch underperforming stores as sales lag. It's literally just backing up what we were just saying.
$5 pizzas. Crazy. When I read that, I was just like, oh my God.
Domino's chief executive Dom Meege says that ditching underperforming stores and dropping delivery fees should help turn the pizza chain around as it works to get sales back on track. In trading update on Tuesday, the company said some stores had improved in the second half, but remained low on the medium term outlook of 3%, 6%. It would reduce the number of stores. They've just sold off 260 of the Pizza Hut stores in Australia. All the Pizza Hut got sold. But yeah, it's interesting to see that it doesn't matter what business that are out
Doesn't
there.
matter how grassroots it is.
You're a bank, your food, your whatever, everyone's getting impacted. I don't know if all the people eating fast food are dying or whatever, but anyway, who knows why they're not spending their money. But it's just interesting. So you've got some questions coming through, but let's get on to our topics of discussion. How do you feel the impact of interest rates are affecting the market?
How do I feel or how do my clients feel? Both.
Well, both.
Okay. Well, I mean, in terms of my own perception of what happens, I think that the critical element of what they have not done is let the rates set in. Like you got to let concrete cure, right? It's got to get hard before you actually put the foundation on. I think that's the same thing. If you keep testing this basket of goods every month, fantastic, but you need to have some logic behind it and say, okay, well, hey, how's this going to work? Because we've got clients who are at all ends of the spectrum. We've got guys who deliver drinks.
Mm-hmm.
We've got guys who own the company
Mm-hmm.
that make the drinks, right? And seniors in between, guys
Which
on
drinks?
any drinks, right?
Neither of us drink.
Yeah, neither of us drink, but it's in soft drink, for example, right?
Don't drink that either.
And we've got clients who are doctors, really
Tradies, blue collar workers,
investment bankers, the whole works, right? And
unemployed,
no, yeah, exactly.
retired.
No one is escaped from the big hammer that comes down in terms of interest rates. So for me, I think when I see it and I look at my client base and the cross section of it, I think we have a reasonably good cross section of Australia. That's my honest opinion. And it's not the people who are the wealthiest in the world who actually, they don't really care about the interest rates. They're either got enough cash, got enough in offset, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But the people who are trying to get their financial freedom faster, they're the ones who are actually hustling and buying properties and saving and doing everything. And when those rates turn up in such an aggressive mode, you can't plan for that, right? And so I think that's where the energy sucked out of the market.
But I think you can plan for it, and that's by having a good strategy to start off to look at the risk. A lot of people are planning for it. Like, we can easily say you can't plan for it because, we've already factored in the deal.
Yeah.
But I know that there's a big segment, I reckon 90% of the market segment, which would be buying these things, watching slick ads, all those sort of things.
Amazing Instagram.
Yeah, posing Instagram with their tattoos and their slick haircut and shit, like, we've seen them all. Front of the car.
Yeah, and so that's the thing for me is that I like time, and I always tell clients time in the market, as Nathan's always said, is going to be your big benefit and your big friend. And it's also a case where the financial factors that revolve around property and any sort of economic factors, time is key. So I think that they've overshot this. In terms of my clients, I think they're all feeling the pinch, unfortunately.
I think everyone is.
Everyone is, right? And so a lot of people are looking to get in to do their tax returns early to see what they can get in terms of refunds and whatnot to help. And CPA did a poll and a bit of a, what are they called? I can't remember now. A poll across section of their audience, and they said that most people are going to be spending their refunds on bills and groceries, right?
Yeah.
Whereas normally it's cars and holidays and toys and kids and all that other type of stuff. So everyone's going sort of back to basics in that regard there. So I think it is important that everyone understand that it's going to be a little bit rough.
I actually just thought about it, right? If we saw, let's say for instance, everybody's interest rates have gone up, right? This is actually pretty funny, right? Let's just follow me here with the theory I'm thinking as you're saying that. Let's say for instance, someone's position was neutral cash flow, right? They've gone from neutral cash flow to negative cash flow 40K a year, right? Just making up some numbers here, right? Just the average $1 million mortgage or whatever the case may be, right? They've lost 40 grand a year now. That 40 grand would go on their tax return as a loss, right?
Yes.
Meaning that they can claim that. So if they got 40 grand loss, then that means that they'll be able to deduct that as a deductible, right?
Yep.
If every second person's making deductibles because of making losses out there, that means that the ATO is going to be hemorrhaging so much cash because they're going to be paying more than what they're going to be earning, right? In tax returns.
Drop.
That means the tax receipts drop. So that means that the ATO then is bringing in less revenue for the government, which would then in turn mean that the government has to take on more debt at a higher bond rate because they don't have the cash flow or the revenue coming through, and it's going to hurt even harder to the government.
So in that example there, for Nathan's example, someone who's on a top tier bracket, they might get between 15 and 18 grand back, whereas normally they would be getting not a huge amount more because the interest rates were lower, right? So it's neutrally geared.
Yeah.
So if you're in a position where you are having negative cash flows for this year, which may not be the case for the last couple of years, you'll be in a position where you have large tax refunds. To Nathan's point, the government's giving you back more money, right? So they're not actually taking in as much money, they're giving you back, right? So that outflow starts to add up, and that's where they have those calls of, ceasing negative gearing and all those other type of things. So it is, again, another potentially inflationary thing.
More inflation, more inflation.
The next question is, what is the most, have you come across any interesting cases while working with property investors? We have. So we've come across a lot of different interesting...
I didn't do it. These were the questions that started tonight.
That's all right.
We just hopped in there. Okay.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of interesting cases. We work with property clients, other property types, attitudes to properties, businesses surrounding properties, for example. Clients sometimes pivot and become property, guys. So there's a lot of different interesting cases which we have. Probably the most interesting one is where clients tend to do mini developments, for example. So they might have a block of units, or they might have, for example, a block of land, and they go off and they try to develop it and create equity out of it. It is what we see always probably a little bit more risky, and we've seen probably a few go wrong, which didn't need to. But in terms of interesting cases, there's plenty. There's a lot of different things, a lot of different types of properties you get for clients, for example, which we look at and we go, wow, that's actually really, it's amazing, right? You're buying something in Western Australia which is yielding 8-9%, while Sydney's yielding 2%, right? So you just
even in Sydney, getting 10% in Sydney, while Sydney's yielding 2%.
But it's what Nathan kind of always says, is that it's not sexy, but it works, right? And that's the reality. So
that's what I've been telling all the girls my whole life too.
It definitely works. So it's one of those things where interesting cases do come up. We've had clients who have bought properties, flipped them, strata them, do a whole bunch of different things. But typically they do that at a latter stage of their investment portfolios, usually based in some sort of foundational property setting. And that's important to know as well. So again, it's not sexy, but it works. That's really important. And it's one of those things where if you try to go with too flamboyant, too creative at the start, it puts a huge gap between you and that end destination, right? Because you might get tied up with financing, builders, council, the whole works that you can think of. It becomes really, really tough. And so we've seen clients who have built properties and done really big sort of developments. And in the end, they go, you know what, I should have just bought 10 properties. It would have been a lot easier, a lot less headache. So, what's one of the interesting ones you've seen?
You can't really tell everyone that.
Yeah, you can't, but that's the reality.
Mate, I've seen so many different things. Probably the interesting thing I'd realise out there is when I go through stats and data, right? And I go through, like, a lot of people don't realise, they just think, Birchie's just a silly guy on the internet and talks about funny things. He says things that are raw, says things that are real, all that sort of stuff. The thing that I find interesting is if we look at the data, right, and that's very important because I can look at what things used to sell for, what they sell for now, and all that. I reckon that 90% of people that buy property in the country don't make money, right? Because they buy the property for like 500 grand, they sell it for 600 grand, and it might appear that they'll make money over 5 years, right? And yes, you made $100,000, but in and out costs attached to that, the tax, the cash flow might have been negative geared for the last 5 years at 10 grand a year, all those sort of things. And doesn't mean that everyone's making money out there. So I'm very, very stringent, and I reckon that 98% of the properties in the market I wouldn't touch because they just don't add up as a good investment, and the numbers don't stack up. So like, if you had a business, would you go and employ everyone that's got a job out there? I reckon I wouldn't employ 98% of the people that are employed because they're probably shit, they're chucking sickies, they're,
Probably more sort of acute than that is that you see a lot of different businesses. I see a lot of different businesses.
Yeah.
There's probably 90% of businesses I wouldn't do.
Exactly.
Right.
And you think that they're good. You think that they could make money.
On the surface, they look, fantastic, but when you get under the covers, it becomes tough.
The Domino's stores, right? Like we talked about the Domino's that they're, closing Domino's stores here. The last article that we have, wherever it is, it says here, whatever the article was. But they make like $100,000 a year, $50,000 a year after all expenses. So you're signing up a lease, you're putting $500,000 into the deal, all these sorts of things. You've got to do long hours, fucking greasy, hot.
That's why people end up owning multiple stores like that. We've got a lot of clients who own like sort of big box franchise stuff.
Yeah.
And they end up owning multiple because one store might pay 75, 125. So they go, okay, well, for the effort, I might just throw another one on top and get 225s, and it becomes it's hard, right? And so that model is really difficult.
But if that 50k disappears, if it's bringing in 50k and then it goes negative 50k and you got 5 of them, then you're in the shit.
It becomes really tough. So you've got to be careful, and sometimes the grass is greener on the other side.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not.
Most time it's not. Yeah.
All right, number 2. What is the most unique or memorable property investment strategy you've come across in your career? So I would probably say there's no unique or memorable, but I would say successful. Some of our clients who have just laser focused, gone, I'm doing A and I'm getting to B, and they've done it like clockwork. And honestly, it's impressive. It's motivating. Some of them don't have gigantic incomes. Some of them have, sacrificed a lot where they've sold a house or they've saved really well. And they're just, what you said to me before in much less colourful terms is just listen to what I say and I'll get you there. You said a few different adjectives around it, but it's honestly the truth, and that's what I've seen. And that's not just telling you because you're here, but you see the clients and they go, like, I get impressed. I go, wow, this guy's got 8 or 9 properties after 2 years, right? Like, it's not lightning, and it's not super snail.
And we see people in all different walks of life, right? Like we've got from actors to sports people to bloody professionals, doctors, IT guys, everything. Tradies, fucking business owners.
Yeah, everything in between.
Any sort of thing. And you could have someone on 80,000 or 60,000 a year that's a 25-year-old that does greater than someone that's on $500,000 a year that's 40.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
And you'd go in the echelon of society, you'd say, well, that person's more successful because they've got a couple of extra little, letters at the end of their business card. But the bank balance of the 80,000 a year, 60,000 a year person is far greater because of the steps that they've taken and how committed they are. So
one of them was the one who won the prize at your lovely end of year party.
Yeah.
Mr. McCormick.
It's a nice story.
Really good story, right? And it's really heartening to see, and that's probably the most memorable, to see people who get on a journey, get off, succeed. I love it. Like it really motivates us. So it's really good.
There's a few that are just new upcomers that have started like the last 2 years. We've got like one at 19, one got 28.
For me, the number isn't important.
Yeah.
It's actually the target. They go, by end of this year, I want 3.
Yeah.
And they get 3. Yeah. And they go, I'm on target. And the next year they go, I only want another 2, or because the bank's tapped me out. Yeah. I did this, I did a super fund, I did a trust, I did whatever, and end up with a 3 or 4, right? And that sort of laser focused discipline, I like it. Cool. And that's probably what I see as most memorable for me. Okay. Question number 3, and then probably jump onto the discussion topics. If you had the power to change one aspect of the property investing accounting industry, what would it be and why? Really good question. In the property space, I would certainly say there needs to be a filtering of people who sell properties. And I would say in the accounting industry, what would it be and why? I think there needs to be a more productive and positive way in which the people who are really committed to dealing with tax-related issues and clients who are really committed to doing the right thing, there should be some sort of...
You can't set up your accounting practice in a tent under an umbrella at the end of the escalator of the shops with a yellow banner around it.
I'm okay with that. You never know, I could be there one day.
No, you're too intelligent to be there, Ed.
I think if clients and accountants could work together to say, present a unified front, I think that was probably one of the big things. At the moment, we're agents of the tax office, and everyone thinks that we're the bad guys and they're the bad guys. But I think it's more collaborative. So I'd like to change it to be a more positive place.
I reckon that they should armour you with a fucking Uzi when you go to fight for people to get their tax returns back. You're free for all to go and take it out with three-letter organisations from the.
They're okay, but I think they've been a little.
They've always been good to me.
Yeah, they're always okay, but I think of late the collections have been a little bit aggressive. But it is what it is.
Very aggressive, though.
Okay, so we've got a couple of questions here.
I reckon that the collections team are very aggressive because they're broke.
Yeah, no,
They don't have money.
I don't think that's actually an epiphany. I think when they need to collect, they do collect because the coffers are running dry.
But they've got no money. They're screwed.
So you asked one of the questions already.
I already asked the impact of interest rates on property investing. What do you reckon about the impact of inflation on property investing?
The impact of inflation on property investing is very closely tied, right? So if you've got interest rates which are going up, they're meant to curb inflation, and that curbing inflation is meant to effectively reduce house prices. We have seen in the last 6 months it hasn't worked at all.
Yeah.
But the problem of it all is that inflation directly leads to cost of goods going up.
Yeah.
What is one core cost of good is rent, and that rent, when that goes up, downstream effect of everything is really impactful, right?
Yeah.
So I think if they were to look at this in a global lens, they understand it, but they have no other mechanism to be able to deal with it, right?
I just saw Andrew made a comment on there, right? Andrew's from Blink in New South Wales. She looks after all the experience of the tenants moving into the properties and in our property management team and working for our owners to make sure we get the best sort of outcomes for everybody. And just thinking about it, right? Like, let's just reverse engineer someone's position, right? Let's just say the rent was $300 per week and it goes to $500 per week, right? This is very common right now out there in the world, right? So that's a figure of $200 per week. Now, as a rule of thumb, a tenant that goes to the property should be spending 30% of their income on rent.
Props, yeah.
So if someone was on $300 a week rent, that means that they need to be on $50,000 per annum, right?
Yeah.
To be able to afford that. But then they've got to pay taxes and stuff like that, maybe a bit of child support, school, clothes, whatever, right? So there's not much left over, right? So if someone's paying $300 a week, they need $50K per year. If someone's now paying $500 per week, then that would need to be that they'd be earning $1,500 per week, meaning that they need to be on, say, $78K per annum, right? So the reality of it is that the rent has gone up from $300 per week to $500 per week, but the income, so that's $200 per week or 10 grand per annum, right? The fact is that the rent has gone up, but the incomes have not gone up at the same sort of rate. Meaning that if someone's on $50K a year, they might have gone to $55K or even $60K, right? But that's eating into their income. So if the tenant can't afford now to have, if the tenant can't afford to pay their rent because they've got to find an extra $200 a week, what are they going to do? They're going to stop ordering Uber Eats. They're going to stop buying new furniture. They're going to stop buying cool stuff at the shops, whatever the case may be. Stop spending at the shops. Then those shops have less revenue coming through, meaning that they're going to cut hours of the other people, meaning that their income is going to go down, right?
Yeah.
This is a very
scary spiral,
slippery slope.
Yeah.
And the outcome for this will end up in massive deflation to stave off the inflation. But the problem is that they can control the deflation, but they can't control the inflation. So the only way for them to fix it is to do what they did last time to change, to stop the deflation of lockdowns and all that sort of stuff. And they're going to have to print. And when they print next time, they're going to have to print a hell of a lot more to fix up the mess they created. So
I think that's true, and I think if you look at that math that you've done there, is that the numbers are staggering.
Yeah.
Rent goes up 66%. To compensate it, wages have to go up at least 50%.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Is it that a business will then have to charge more?
But unemployment's going up, not the...
Well, I mean, if you wanted to catch up, but then if as a business, you've got to charge more. What happens to your basket of goods?
Goes up.
Goes up, right? So it's a
I went to the Coles the other day, right? And I get everything without seed oils.
Let me ask you how much you reckon a persimmon is. You know persimmon, the fruit?
What?
Personally.
Oh, yeah, vaguely. It's like not talking about how much.
How much do you reckon it is? A single person. One. Like normal food.
$12.
It's $3
$3
for one.
Well, and nothing will surprise me, right? We're not that far down inflation yet, but check back at next month and it will, right?
You're wrong.
So the thing is that yes, that's one thing, but like I went to the shops the other day with my mum, and we bought 2 bananas and we bought a punnet of blueberries. It sounds like a joke. I went to Coles with my mum and bought 2 bananas and fucking a punnet of blueberries. My mum came out and I bought a kebab too, right? So I felt like it was a new shopping centre with a new shop, and I was like, I haven't had a kebab for a very long time. And I came back and my mum's come out of the shop. She's like, she got a high-pitched voice. She's like, Nathan, you have no idea what the fuck they charged me. They're fucking robbery, right? My mum's pretty funny. And she's 80, by the way. And I was like, I turned around and I said, what, like $10 for it or whatever? And she goes, it was like $9, whatever it was. I was like, yeah, a punnet of blueberries, right? I didn't even think about it, right? How many punnet of blueberries?
Now.
Like $8, $7.
Nuts.
And it's like, that's just from like...
Back in the day when the...
2 for $3 or something.
Yeah, when the needle strawberries are going around, they couldn't give them away.
It got up so high. So how are people affording to feed their family, right?
Oh, it's nuts, man. Like how much is a kebab you bought?
It was like $18, $18. $18 for fucking chicken kebab.
It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. Anyway, let's move on.
Anyway.
So number 3, investing in affordable properties. The benefits and challenges of investing in affordable properties and navigating regulatory landscape. Talk about the rental crisis. So I'll leave most of this to you, but investing in affordable properties, the challenges and the benefits are twofold. From a tax agent's point of view, or a person seeing a lot of people's tax, is that affordable properties are often associated with, more affordable areas, different types of, communities and economies. Nothing bad or nothing good, but typically they have repairs, they have properties which, may have more frequent or more regular maintenance requests, for example. And certainly those properties, when they're first bought, it's kind of like a car. You don't sell a perfect car, you sell a property which is needing some work. So you might need an AC, whatever, hot water system, $5,000, whatever it might be. So those are the biggest challenges, how to write those off, how to navigate the repairs and maintenance versus improvement. Certainly we can have a chat about that. But over to you in terms of the benefits.
Affordable properties, a lot of people have a connection that affordable property means that it's cheap and needs work though. Like, how many properties have we bought? Like, let's look at all the Gold Coast. Let's say we bought 600 properties a year for 7 years, 6 sevens, 42. 4,200 properties in the Gold Coast that we bought, right? Out of them, like, how many of them were new and how many old? I reckon 50% of them would have been like 10 years old. 15 years old. Yeah, maybe 70% of them. 70% of them are like 10, 15 years old. So those properties, they wear balaclavas at Coles and Woolies. It's a funny story that I'll tell everyone. When it came to Corona, everyone had to wear a mask, right? I went out and bought balaclavas to wear the Coles and Woolies.
No, you also bought like a GIMP mask.
Yeah, I bought the GIMP mask. And the balaclava to wear to Coles and Woolworths because they said I had to wear a facial gear. So I decided to wear a balaclava. So it's pretty fun. You can buy balaclavas on eBay if you're really interested on it. But the properties that you buy that are affordable doesn't mean that they're old or damaged. Like, a lot of the properties, I bought one the other day in Brisbane for $280K, and it's a 2-bedroom unit. It sold 10 years ago, brand new 10 years ago for like 330 grand or something like that. Picked it up for 280,000, rent for like $400 a week. And it's an affordable property in a capital city.
I think that's a good distinction. Affordable doesn't necessarily mean, filled with problems.
Yeah. Exactly. So, and looking at like the benefits of it, I guess, like, imagine like the cash flow you can have far greater, right? if you've got one property for $1 million that rents for $1,000 a week, you're in a lot of trouble today, right? $1 million of a loan at 6% is 60 grand a year. You get $1,000 a week, you're negative cash flow from the day dot. If you had 5 properties at 200 grand a piece, well, then there's a lot more people being forced into that cheap end of the market, meaning that the price gets dragged up, and you got just the vortex of the market sucking it up. You got the build cost becomes below the replacement cost, and then the other thing is that you have the cash flow. Like if you've got 5 properties at 200 grand and you're getting $350 a week in rent, and that rent goes from $350 to $450, well then you're getting $100 times 5 in rent increases. So the economy of scale is far much sort of greater and dragged out as well. So I guess we've got 2 more things to talk about.
Sure.
You got to go right now? Or
no, that's all right. We've got a couple of minutes in me.
I've held Ridhwan. I love catching up and having chats with you. So
that's why, yeah.
Should we go to the gym afterwards later tonight? Do you have time?
Maybe.
Yeah, okay, maybe. We'll get Ridhwan to the gym. One day.
Evaluating return on investment, tools and strategies for calculating ROI and evaluating investment opportunities. That's actually a really good question. And I think it's an overused tool when it comes to purely looking at properties in certain locations, certain types of flavors and whatnot. Great baseline tool, ROI, but it doesn't factor in a lot of things that you mentioned. Some people are just looking at statistical data. They're not looking at, migrant patterns. They're not looking at all these different things that often, you've talked to me about over the years about why you're buying in particular areas, the snowy hydro, all these other different things that are going on. There's a lot of different tools and strategies that are available for you to use. Now, because I don't give property investment advice and it's Nathan's space, I would say is that when clients come to us and say, hey, this property is yielding 8% and I found it online myself, I go, well, that doesn't really matter.
How much equity are you getting? What's the potential for growth? Or how much below market value are you picking up for?
A whole bunch of different things which, that you're not assessing and just purely looking on one number.
What is the risk attached to the property?
Yeah.
What is the property type? Is it a studio unit? Is it a holiday property? Is it a student property? Is it something with risk that's totally
artificially inflated, right? So, so ROI is not bad. It's a good baseline measure. But I think properties, because they are so pervasive around different things, where people are, what people like doing, outlook, looks, access to transport, amenities, hospitals, all those things, you can't just use that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, 100%. You can buy property that's cheap, but doesn't mean it's good value as well.
Yeah, right? I used that with one client once. I go, if you want cheap properties, they're all over Australia.
Yeah.
But they probably won't help you anyway.
Yeah.
In any way, shape, or form to get what you want.
The big difference between cheap or budget and value. That's the key.
Absolutely.
The next one is incorporating a real estate portfolio into an overall financial plan. How to use real estate investing as a part of a broader investment strategy.
Yeah, look, so real estate obviously is the core of what B.Invested does, and a pretty big large subset of what a lot of our clients do. Real estate portfolio, because generally speaking, it's large in size, like you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's always an advice from our point of view is that when you are investing in real estate and an overall plan, is that, to use your last sentence, is that don't cheap out, right? There's a lot of people who sell properties cheaper, do tax returns, who will say this, who will say that, I'll do it free, blah, 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 blah. But there's always coming with this thing in the tail, right? Like it's just like the off the plan stuff, right? Yeah, you can buy it and it's cheap and no one's apparently making money out of this and it's a build cost. But we know, someone's getting paid, right? So I think it's important to understand that real estate has different types of categories, new, existing properties, off the plan, bulk bills, which you've done, in limited format when it's worked well for clients and you've identified good growth areas. So I think there's a lot of different parts of the real estate world which are tied in with investing, but not necessarily that you have to have, a clear understanding that I'm only going to buy new or I'm only going to buy existing. I think it does, that divestment or diversification of asset type is important. And when you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's important to ask the right people, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And I like the fact of property that you can leverage it. You go buy a business, you go buy some shares, you go buy a chunk of silver or gold, those things you can't leverage like you can with property.
Sure.
And property has the ability to go up
That's a
to
good
95% if you really wanted
very good
to.
point.
Yeah. So, Brendan, welcome aboard tonight. Keep the comments coming.
Last question that we had was strategy on what someone's tax looks like. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that.
Oh, yeah, okay, sure.
So if someone had a tax bill, right? Let's say someone's on 100 grand a year. What would be roughly the amount of tax someone would be paying on 100 grand a year?
Call 24 grand.
24 grand, right? So you're losing 24% of your money on average to get there. What would someone's tax be on, say, 50 grand a year?
9 grand.
9 grand. So you're saving 15 grand by doing that. What would someone's tax be at 30 grand a year?
Peanuts. Cool.
Peanuts, right? Nothing. You get a concession card for being a brokie, right? Right? So everyone out there goes negative gearing this, negative gearing that, and you've got all these experts out there that are off the plan sales guys, right? They've normally got a suit, they've got a nice little slide deck, and they'll show you, this is how the property will perform based on this potential, that potential, the other potential. They'll say if it loses money at this amount, you can roll it over, and they make it sound great for you losing money. Thanks, Charlie. Appreciate it, mate. So yeah, if someone was on 100 grand a year income and they're paying 24 grand a year, you wouldn't want to buy something to lose 70 grand a year to get down to that level, right?
Yeah.
But if you're on 100 grand, you're losing 24 grand a year. How could you successfully, and I know what to do with this, I'm going to sort of guide my thoughts on that, but how could you successfully reduce it? Like one of the most common things that come to my mind would buy a property like for 200 grand that rents for $400 a week, but it might only be 10 years old, below rebuild cost. It ticks all the boxes below market value and everything as well. Buy it for 200 grand, rent for $400 a week. It might be neutral, might put $50 a week in your pocket, so you earn money, you've got to pay tax on that. But if you've got a property that's, let's call it neutral cash flow, and it's only 10 years old and you've got depreciation of like 5 grand or 8 grand, right? If you have a property that's giving you 8 grand depreciation on it and you've got 5 of them,
yeah, you're getting 24% of that back.
That's 40 grand a year. You're going to be,
Yes.
8 grand a year depreciation times 5 properties.
Oh, that's your deduction, yeah, 24%.
So you wouldn't technically be, it'd be like 100 grand, you'd only be at 60 grand income now, and your tax rate at 60 grand, what do you pay at 60 grand? Roughly?
10 grand.
10 grand. So you've got assets that are going up, assets that you can pull equity out of, assets that cost you nothing to repair because they're fairly new, assets that are neutral to positive cash flow, and you're using a paper loss to wipe out some of your tax return and reducing your debt down to a point where you can probably get a concession card and say, I can't afford it, so I need to get on the pension card because I'm a multi-millionaire investor.
Minus the last bit, the strategy of what you're implementing there is using, non-cash losses, non-cash deductions to be able to reduce your income, pull it down a bracket, for example. The tax on 60 grand might be, $12,000, $13,000, $14,000, so you're saving yourself that $9,000 there, right? I think what's also important is the properties give you options, right? Because if you have nothing, you've got phone, you've got a couple of home office expenses, but if you've got property, you can prepay your interest, you can prepay certain elements of running and maintenance for that property. You
Lots
might
of repairs for the property.
You might have expenses in repairs that you can pull forward for the property.
I never do renovations to my properties, Fred. I never do renovations. I only ever repair it. I continuously seem to be repairing it.
Affordable properties.
Affordable properties.
So those are the things that we find that a lot of people go, hey, if I buy this property, how much can I get? I go, it's a different question. When you buy this property, what are your options now to increase your ability to get more tax back? Because if you don't have anything, then you're not going to get it. Nothing changes, right? So I think what the properties get you in terms of, and I keep returning to it, is that it gets you the options to be able to do something the same way that the properties are going to give you options to be able to have financial freedom, more time, independence, all those things as to why you're buying them.
I couldn't imagine, right? I could never imagine this, but imagine having one income to pay for your life, right? Like 50 grand, 100 grand, 200 grand, no matter what the income level is. If you've got that one income, well then you have to work harder to try and push their income up, right? Someone on 50 grand, 100 grand, in today's market, cost of your pomegranate's gone up, whatever, persimmons, gone up. These things that have, these things are all going up in value. Your shopping basket's getting smaller, your bills are increasing. Everybody's losing weight because they can't afford to eat, but they're putting it on because they're eating not as good food, seed oils, all those things that are inside the food. There's a topic for a different day. But you're getting squashed with inflation. You don't have any other options in life. If you had 10 rental properties, well, then you've got 10 sets of rents that go up by $100 a week.
It's options.
$1,000 a week extra. If you didn't have those 10, if you only had one, you got one hook in the ocean to catch one round of rental increases. If you got 10 hooks, you got 10 hooks to catch equity, growth, and cash flow.
Yeah, so, I think it's what you said to me before, is that it's the amount of properties you control that gives you the options to be able to then consider what your next move is.
Yeah. So Matt said, great comment, Rid.
Thanks, Matt. See you soon. It's always a pleasure.
And on that note, I think we've been on for how long we've been alive for? Like hour and a half. I think that should do us for today. Thanks everyone for tuning in. A lot of people will be getting slugged when it comes to tax time. They'll be getting extorted from the three-letter organisation. They're all anything to do with the government. I'm saying it's not Ridhwan. Nothing good. No, I don't know a time which I could have gone to the pub at 3 o'clock in the morning and something good happened, right? So like getting drunk, nothing good happens, right? When it comes to anything that happens with the government, nothing good comes from,
Don't say that, Nathan. You have beautiful babies with the government.
Well, it's the government. Nothing really fun happens when it comes to.
Maybe that's true.
It's always pain, right? And when it comes to that, you need to make sure that you have the right people to look after you, and that's where my confidence comes in for you, Red.
Thank you, Nathan.
Have you looking after
and
ourselves and our clients.
Absolutely happy to help, and if anyone needs any time and all, Nathan says you're on the phone all the time, just having chats with people. Doesn't necessarily have to be a client, but we'll do what we can to help.
Yeah. The only thing we can't do is get you the Uzi to help everything.
Got a keyboard.
A keyboard Uzi, right? It's a keyboard warrior. Yeah. And he does a very fucking good job at that, eh? Very, very good job. So thank you for all that you do, Ridhwan.
No worries, thank you. It's always a pleasure. Thank you to the people who tuned in and the community. It's always a pleasure serving you guys.
If anyone has any questions, wants to be put in contact, there's a link in the description. Book in for a chat with my team. We'll hook you up with Ridhwan. He'll be able to assist you in planning, and it's not just saving taxes, it's planning that strategy. There's so many accountants out there that will go, I will save you the most amount of tax and, do things that cut corners or whatever, but they're not really understanding the overall strategy and plan. I think it's important to make sure that everybody on your team, if the accountant marks income down as 30 grand a year income, you get a food stamp and you get a pension card, it's great. However, you're missing out on the fact of getting loans and property. So you need to make sure that it's done in a certain way to be able to keep everyone happy and keep you well positioned to be able to continue with your journey. So reach out. It's coming up tax time shortly in the next, what is it? How many days to tax time?
About 15 days.
15 days.
18 days actually, so I lied, so yeah.
Yeah, the Gestapo come around and try and shake you down for all the money you've earned this year, and we need Ridhwan here.
Rental properties would be on the prowl as well, so for the ATO, so got to do a good job.
Got to do a good job, and between having the right team, we're all here to make it happen. So thanks a lot for tuning in, everyone.
Thanks,
Keep going. Have a great week. Keep being awesome. If there's anything you need, reach out to us. And there's a link in the description for you to be able to contact my team and book them for a chat. We'll catch up soon. Have a great day.
Cheers.
Bye for now.